if we stick with our sanctions and we all stay together, I do think that we'll be able to make Russia buckle and pull out within a couple months.
Wow. Representative Ruben Gallego, can I just skip to saying Senator Gallego? I think so. It's a formality, isn't it? Good morning, Senator. Future Senator.
Good morning.
Good morning. Of the great state of Arizona. I'm not kidding. Okay. You're going to run, right? I'm just asking.
I think we should focus on Ukraine.
Okay, let's do that. All right, let's do that. Oh, now I know you're a real politician. Okay. Representative, obviously, it's so funny. We played two of your sound bites. I had the entire thing highlighted that you said on TV because it was all so important, because we know you served. We know you served, obviously, in Iraq. And, a lot of us don't, we're just lay people looking at what's happening here. But what I'm seeing in this incredible spirit of the Ukrainians, and, the key is what you said, if we can all stick together. Isn't that the problem here, is your Republican colleagues have not only some of them been rooting for Putin, including the former president, but, they're blaming Biden this morning for gas prices when we've finally taken this important step, right, to ban oil imports from, let's talk about that first, oil imports from Russia, which we've got to do morally, don't we?
Well, certainly. I mean, right now, the only thing that's feeding the beast of war is oil money. This isn't really going towards the civilians of Russia. It's not going to the pensioners. They're just doing this right now, basically to continue to buy the weapons. And that does impose some cost on us. But, if we want to be in this greater fight, then we have to have a greater sacrifice. And that may mean higher pump prices for, a couple of months or hopefully a couple weeks.
But Representative, we've been talking about this already on the show this morning, that first of all, to blame the president instead of Putin for gas prices, and secondly, not the gas companies that are clearly gouging through this period. I mean, somebody tweeted, and those who carry on about Trump's $1.79 gas have completely forgotten everything was shut down. The economy crashed, demand was slashed, production was slashed, oil at the time went to a negative value. They want to go back to that. And when no one had a job to pay for gas, right?
And nobody was moving around. Yeah, I made that comment yesterday on Twitter, too. Same thing.
Right.
Look, I think the bigger issue is not that right now what's happening is that I think the Republicans are afraid that President Biden has handled this situation so well that his numbers are going to start rising. Because at the end of the day, all they care about is elections. They don't care about consequences or outcomes. So the best way to basically ditch or make the president's numbers dive, even though he's doing very well, is by trying to blame him for all these kind of ancillary things that are occurring. So it's a very unpatriotic thing that they're doing.
Yep.
It's something that, I don't think we would ever do as Democrats, but this is where we are right now.
As someone who has served, Representative, you tweeted to keep up the sanctions, make the Russian economy hurt. It clearly already is. And you said give the Ukrainian people the munitions, the gear, the missiles to destroy as many Russian assets as possible to make Putin feel the pain if Russia further invades. There's obviously a lot of talk about a no-fly zone. I understand why. It's above my pay grade, all the stuff that you know about. I don't know what kind of missiles, whatever they need, but yeah, go ahead.
So I feel like we're getting everything they need up to now. I think there's probably some other things we can try to get them, some different type of missile systems to deal with surface-to-ship missiles, for example. We could also be looking at different types of air assets, whether it's MiGs, drones, or helicopters. But look, I think we have to be very conscious of when people start talking about no-fly zone. You don't just impose a no-fly zone, because in order for you to impose a no-fly zone, you have to worry about and probably also deal with all the potential dangers. So that means that the U.S. military or NATO would be firing on, manned Russian anti-aircraft systems, right?
Right.
Potentially ships, because ships could also shoot down planes. And that's how this thing escalates. It's not going to be us shooting down a MiG. It's going to be us taking out 200 men in a different kind of, in some type of defensive position that are aiming in at our planes. So it's very complicated to establish a no-fly zone. I think people just really need to understand that. And it's nothing that we couldn't do right away, and it's nothing that we could do without loss of life on both sides.
Well, I guess people are sometimes saying you could call them safe civilian corridors. But again, how do you do that when you have a country that is continually committing war crimes? that is violating ceasefires, that is firing on civilians. How do we do that, in your opinion?
Well, look, if you change the name, it doesn't change the fact that you're still going to have to end up shooting at somebody. This is, in Iraq, when I was there, they told us to work on the hearts and minds of, Iraqis. That we weren't occupying, we weren't in war, we were working hearts and minds. And guess what? I still ended up having to fight my way out of a lot of situations, right? So calling it something different does not change the complexity of it on the floor. And we need to realistically think about how we can help defeat Russia, and at the same time stop us from triggering ourselves into a potential world war.
So all of the stuff we just played from what you said yesterday, it again seems to confirm what we're seeing, that this is going pretty disastrously for Russia. This is not going according to plan. The entire world pretty much is united against him. He apparently is getting, according to sources, angrier and more paranoid by the moment, which, again, there's something we've never seen in warfare before, right? Is attacking a nuclear power plant. That in itself is really concerning, isn't it? That's just to pick one war crime for today, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm like, look, I think a lot of us make the mistake that, and I think this happens in foreign policy a lot, is because someone looks like us and talks like us, they think like us. Yeah. And the Russians, speak great English. They're capitalists, even though they're corrupt capitalists, and they're white, like most of the majority establishment when it comes to policy and defense in D.C. and other parts of the world. But at the end of the day, they don't think like us. They're Russians. They have a different history. They have a different way of looking at even life and death. And so for them, attacking a nuclear power plant is not as crazy as we think it is, because they used to throw men to shovel dirt onto an open core back in the day. So how are we surprised that they're not willing to take a risk to take a power plant? So we really have to rethink this, and we have to really rethink how we think about Russia. And look, I think at the end of the day, the one thing that I've noticed is that Ukraine wants to fight to survive, and Russia just wants to dominate. And at the end of the day, the people that want to survive and want to really thrive are the ones that will end up winning. And I just don't see the numbers there. I don't see the motivation. I don't see even the equipment they can have to fully occupy a country.
Yeah. Well, that's what somebody put it best. They said, if Russia stops fighting, there's no more war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there's no more Ukraine. So
correct.
Yeah. And that's what I think Putin did not obviously foresee, is this will and spirit of the Syrian people. It occurs to me that Putin so far is also losing the information war. But I was saying yesterday, Representative, that we're fighting the same thing here against Fox News. We have older relatives that and they have some full-on Putin apologists and cheerleaders there, but they're fighting that with older Russians there, but getting ridiculously wrong information about this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the difference is that the Ukrainians are winning the information war with overwhelming authentic message, right?
Yeah.
So while the Russians are talking about Ukraine being a Nazi state, you see, for example, a young girl singing, a song in the subways while she's sheltering. I think it was like "Let It Snow" or something like that.
Let It Go. How did I know that you wouldn't know Broadway show tunes? It's "Let It Go."
Yeah, "Let It Go." Thank you. So they're playing this, in a very smart manner, because they're cutting through the bullshit by showing the humanity of what's happening. And I think one of the things that we try to do on the Democratic side, especially when fighting the Fox News, is that we try to fight by fact checking.
Yeah.
When I think in reality, a lot of people don't care about the facts, and especially the people that have been sold to the lies of, QAnon and the lies of Fox News.
Yeah.
What we need to have is messaging back that is overwhelming, that cuts through bullshit, that has a good narrative that will basically be stronger than the lies.
You can't say that on. You're going to lose me my FCC license, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sure when you're a senator, you can get my FCC license back, right? Okay.
Sorry.
That's
that a Marine coming out. I apologize.
Okay, we're in the trenches together. That's okay.
It'll be great for the podcast.
We're in the we're in the foxhole together. It's okay.
Yes. Yes, fighting holes. Marines, we have fighting holes. We don't have foxholes.
I was like, oh, again, that's a double BS bomb. Okay. You tweeted, we are watching in real time what happens when a brutal dictator thinks he can steamroll a democracy. The world won't let him. Putin is a small man who gets smaller by the day. You know, Representative, everybody remembers these, images of you on January 6th, helping other Congress people because you served, with how you put a gas mask on and how, literally as if you're in the middle of a war. Were you disappointed a bit like I was? I understand it, but I was disappointed that the president did not mention January 6th in his State of the Union. He did not draw a straight line between. What was your reaction on that?
I think my biggest concern is that January 6th is not taken very seriously by anybody. It's not just, regarding the president's speech. I do think the president, though, did the right thing. We need to focus on the grander picture of how to basically get, the economy going. And more importantly, on the political side, we need to in the Democrats need to get their poll numbers up. For me, as long as U.S. Attorney General Garland is doing his job, we could avoid the speeches. But if at any point I feel that Merrick is not doing his job, which I have been very forthright in my criticism of him in the past, then I think it's a bigger issue. But right now, we need to win this election. We need to win this election and save democracy. And if by skipping one speech and having a unifying voice that really lays out a future without having to go into the past, then I'm fine doing that, because at least strategically it's a smart move that at least protects our ability to stop these guys from winning the election and potentially stop them certifying elections in the future.
Yeah, I get the President of the United States wanting to be above the fray, but I feel like we're all in the fray, and it's that's what I think is difficult, is we see him continually trying to unify, and the other side never. I mean, not during war, not during anything. As you said, there's going to be a lot of revisionist history over Ukraine by Republicans. When he was in power, Trump considered pulling the U.S. out of NATO, withheld aid to Ukraine to try and get dirt on his political opponent. Don't forget that. I mean, his national security advisor, John Bolton, just said Putin was waiting for Trump's second term for him to pull out of NATO. This is why he attacked now. But your Republican colleagues, they're fine with saying, "Oh, it wouldn't happen under Trump. Oh, it's Biden's fault." When clearly it's revisionist history.
Well, I think there's one thing to be said about trying to unify and move forward and having the opportunity to do that at the State of the Union. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't punch them when they're being done, rhetorically punching them, by the way.
Yes, of course, sir.
Because I think I do think one of the hardest problems that we're having right now is Democrats. The reason why we're not doing so well is we're fighting for them anymore. They don't believe that we're even fighting at all. And I do think that there needs to be more of that fighting spirit to really animate our base right now, because a lot of them are, they're tired. They spent 4 years fighting off the Republicans at the polls. They won, and then they come to us in power, and they see a lot of, what I would say, legislative weakness. And not only that legislative weakness, but even rhetorical weakness. So I think it is important that we do push back. Important, especially when we call out their lies, and we need to go on the offensive. When it comes to when we see those opportunities come along.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's results that matter. And as you tweeted, the February numbers are in. U.S. added 678,000 more jobs. Unemployment fell to 3.8%. Records broken. Hashtag Biden boom. I mean, his numbers are obviously headed up, and that's all we can do. First, can I just say on the partisan thing, though, you also tweeted, I was elated to see the PACT Act pass. This is about the burn pits the president was talking about when he was heckled by one of your colleagues when he was talking about his dead son, which was fantastic. Nice, very nice.
Classy.
Yeah, classy. But you said, I was elated to see it guaranteeing quality health care to veterans suffering as a result of toxic exposure. Why did 174 House Republicans vote against it? They passed trillions in tax cuts. Why do they care about billionaires more than sick vets? I mean, it just always feels like lip service to veterans to me, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly feels like lip service to veterans from the Republican Party. The best time for veterans is when Democrats are in charge, because we actually pass bills that actually matter to veterans and end up, really changing their lives. I'll give you an example. The veteran GI Bill was passed because of Democrats. This expansion of the burn pit legislation could only happen because of Democrats. Republicans, have no problem voting for trillion-dollar tax cuts over 10 years because it helps their real special interests, but won't support veterans burn pit legislation, which will cost maybe at most $30 billion per year.
Yeah.
Or if you're afraid of actually costing it too much and borrowing too much, then let's just why don't we raise taxes? I mean, we were in war for 20 years, and we did nothing but cut taxes for 20 years. And now you're saying that, hey, thanks for sacrificing your life, your lungs, but because we're cheap bastards, we're not going to raise, taxes. And so good luck and God bless, right? That's the situation. And by the way, bastard is not a
that. No,
that's
exactly. I was going to say you get a pass on that one.
Solid choice.
Also, because you're a future senator. So. Future Senator, I have one last question, just militarily. We've heard, obviously, about the morale of the Russian troops and some of them that are captured. Of course, they were lied to about denazification when they realized they're ordered to kill civilians. I've been hearing about them trying to get Syrian troops or, obviously, some of these are Chechen hit squads that are trying to assassinate Zelensky. I mean, it's a little ominous, right? That they're like, they're bringing the people that will do the dirty work, the mercenaries, because they're having morale problems. I mean, I guess that's a good sign, but it's also an ominous sign, isn't it, for what Putin is planning and how desperate he is?
Well, it probably tells you a couple things. Number one, that the people that are willing to that can still fight aren't fighting, or they just don't have the manpower in Russia right now. You can't suppress the populace and still invade a country at the same time. You don't have enough people to do that. Certainly people that are going to be loyal to the government. So bringing in Syrians is probably one of the few things they could do. Number two, it's not a really good idea. Syrians aren't good urban fighters. That's not the kind of fighting they've been doing for the last 6 years. So I don't think that's actually going to end up working as well as they thought. But if you want to think about the one ominous thing, it's that they probably want to bring in Syrians because they don't identify with Ukrainians versus a lot of the Russian soldiers are identifying with Ukrainians.
Yeah. And
probably hesitating in terms of fighting Ukrainians or carrying out orders that are, destructive to civilians, and having, Syrians that don't have much of a relationship with Ukrainians, I think is probably one of the main reasons why they're thinking about doing that, which is a very nefarious and unfortunate reason.
Thank you for all you do. Seriously, just for you are such a great patriotic voice in this country, and we got to get you a blue tsunami in 22. Get Senator Mark Kelly back in, and then 2024.
We're gonna get Kelly back in, absolutely.
Yes,
he is another great veteran, and really just a great senator for Arizona.
And then 2024, say it with Arizona, the great but potty mouth senator from the great state of Arizona.
Adios, I love you guys.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, and I didn't think I could love him more, but he's as much of a potty mouth as I am.
Yeah, we'll take
and
it.
I don't. That's fantastic.